Namaste, Prakash here. Welcome to the next edition of Dharma Tales. Let's debate. Our battleground is still Mahabharata, an epic from which we can have a look at countless number of stories, each one with lovely twists and turns, and so much for us to learn together, both about life and about Dharma. In this story, we are going to look at the one and the only kind in the entire Mahabharata. He was the son in law of the entire family, rather, the only brother in law of both Kauravas and Pandavas. We are going to speak about the life of Jayadratha, considered to be a great warrior, the king of Sindhu kingdom. He happened to be married to the only daughter of Dhritarashtra, and hence the only sister of all the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Her name was Dushela. She was given in marriage to Jayadratha, and Jayadratha being a king, obviously he was never satisfied with just what he had in hand, whether it be the kingdom or the pleasures that he was seeking. During the time when Pandavas had gone on exile after they had lost the game of dice, he once chanced to get the message about a beautiful looking woman in the forest who happened to be in an ashram. And he sends his minister to find out who it is. The minister comes back and says that the person, the most beautiful woman on earth, is none other than Draupadi, the wife of his wife's brothers, Pandavas. Yet he chooses a time to go to that ashram when Pandavas are away. And then he proposes to marry her, being a king and being a person who wanted the utmost utilization of he being a king. Initially, Draupadi had entertained him, thinking that he had come with good intentions and that since he was also the only son in law of the family. But later, though there were rishis there to protect her, he proposed to her that he wanted to marry her and he asked her to leave the Pandavas and come along with him. She refused vehemently, and against the helpless rishis, he abducted her and took her away. And it so happened that the Pandavas came along, and it was Bhim who had taken the initiative to run after, and then they had actually come close. And knowing that he will not have a choice, he almost ran away, leaving Draupadi. But the Pandavas, specifically Bhim, chased and finally cornered him and brought him back to where Yudhishthira was there. Bhim wanted to actually kill him. He was almost on the verge of killing. And Yudhishthira was against him being killed for whatever reason. He had been beaten black and blue by then by Bhim. And for whatever reason, Draupadi, maybe out of her value system that he is, after all, the son in law of the family, just gave one signal to Yudhishthira. And Yudhishthira told Bhim to leave him. And Bhim, being full of respect for his elder brother, allowed Jayadratha to go away. Jayadratha's father was a person called Rudraksha. He is the king of, was actually the king of Sindhu. He had given the kingdom to Jayadratha, and then he had moved on to the forest. When Jayadratha went back, he was still really simmering with anger and lust and whatever you can imagine. And somehow he knew that someday he might have to fight the Pandavas again. So He asks his wife Dashela to take care of the kingdom, and then he goes to the forest, does severe penance to Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is happy with his penance, and then he makes an appearance. And then he asks him what is the boon that he wants, which is the way in which things used to operate those days. And Jayadratha was very clear. He said that I want to be able to kill Arjun and the Pandavas. And Lord Shiva knew what was in store because, after all, he was the god. And he knew what was the plan of Lord Krishna. He said that it's not going to be possible. You will not have it. And finally, negotiations happen. And then Jayadratha says that I should be able to defeat all those other than Arjun at least. And Lord Shiva apparently twists and turns and gives him a boon in such a way that Jayadratha doesn't understand. But what actually transpires in terms of the boon that he gave was something like this. He says, on one day of your choice, you'll be able to beat any warrior on the side of Pandavas except Arjun. And with this, Lord Shiva disappears. Jayadratha is happy that at least he got a boon where he can defeat everyone other than Arjun. But he didn't understand what it really was loaded for. So it happened that the Mahabharat war starts. On the 13th day, when Abhimanyu is supposed to storm into the Chakravyuh set by Dronacharya, what happens is Susharma takes Arjun away so that the others can be easily captured. The idea was for them to capture Yudhishthir and then the war would end. With that in mind, but they did not calculate for Abhimanyu's presence. Abhimanyu led, and he was very clear that he was not in a position to come out of Chakravyuh. He knows only the way to enter. So he tells his uncle, the other four Pandavas, that please come along. So they, along with Satiki and others, they go behind Abhimanyu. And that was the day Jayadratha decides to invoke the boon that was given to him by Lord Shiva. He gives that one instruction and gets the boon to be active on that day alone. And on the day of 13th day, he is unstoppable. The moment Abhimanyu enters the Chakravyuh, he closes it off from the front and fights all the Pandavas and Satyaki and everybody else who come there single handedly and is able to defeat all of them. Of course, because of the way in which Lord Shiva had given the boon, he was not able to kill them, but he was able to defeat. By which time, by the end of the day, Abhimanyu had also been killed. And that happened because of Jayadratha sealing off the entry point to the Chakravyuh for the Pandavas. And this infuriates Arjun to no extent. I mean, to such an extent you cannot imagine. And as is known for all these warriors, he comes out with a vow that by the end of 14th day, he will kill Jayadratha and take revenge for the death of his son Abhimanyu. Else, that he will commit suicide by entering fire. Now this message has already now reached the Kauravas, and they all form, with the help of Dronacharya, plans to ensure that Jayadratha at any cost is kept alive, so that at the end of the day, if they are able to save Jayadratha, Arjun will commit suicide because being a warrior that he is. And once he commits suicide, Pandavas can be easily defeated. So Dronacharya forms three different vyuhas. Like the Chakra Vyuha, he creates three other vyuhas which are very difficult to penetrate. And of course, the only person who was capable of penetrating is Arjun. And Arjun keeps fighting the whole day, literally single handedly with the help of the army and the brothers which are behind, but he is leading the show. He is able to literally penetrate each of the vyuhas and break. But so it so happens that almost at the end of the day, Jayadratha is still hiding somewhere behind where Arjun is not even able to see him. and he is disheartened because he is already committed that if he either kills or he will commit suicide. And this is where Lord Krishna steps in. What Lord Krishna does is, with the help of his Sudarshan Chakra, he hides the sun for a few minutes. And it looks so real that the sunset has already happened. And according to the agreed customs, the war for that day comes to an end, which means at the end of the 14th day, with now the war for the day ending, he has not been able to fulfill what he had committed to do. And Arjun puts his head down in shame, and apparently the end is written on the wall, or it so looked. And Jayadratha, now being very sure that Arjun having lost his bet, he walks out openly and then starts making fun of Arjun that he had lost, and he tells him, please come and commit suicide. This is the time Lord Krishna gives a signal to Arjun that be ready. And then he removes his Sudarshan Chakra, and then the sun appears all over again, which means the sunset actually did not happen, but Lord Krishna had faked it. And then he tells Arjun that it's not easy to kill Jayadratha, be very careful because his father, Vriddrakshatra, had, knowing what would happen to his son, had created a curse that anyone who is responsible for his head rolling onto earth, that person's head will shatter into 100 pieces and die. So he reminds him very clearly that his father is staying about a few kilometers away in a specific place. Arjun takes his Pasvatastam first, and then he cuts the head of Jayadratha. But he also ensures that with his archery, he is able to keep pumping arrows into the cut head, and is able to push the head far into the place where Jayadratha's father is sitting. And he was sitting with his eyes closed, and it so happens that the head that was pushed by the arrows of Arjun flies in air and finally lands on the lap of King, his father. And without his knowledge, he opens his eyes and gets up. And since the head rolls off his thigh, technically he becomes responsible for putting the head of his son onto the floor or on Mother Earth. And his curse comes true where his own head bursts into 100 pieces and he dies. This is how the story of Jayadratha begins and ends. But if you really look at, in fact, uh, at the time when he had taken Draupadi away, Bhim had been continuously cursing Yudhishthir as to why he did not allow me to kill him then. And in fact, he comes back again to say the same thing to Yudhishthir. You should have allowed me to kill him then and there, because but for him, we wouldn't have lost our nephew. And all these things wouldn't have happened at all. It's a great story. I mean, with so many twists and turns, how Dharma unfolds, how nature plays its part, how Lord Krishna plays his part to ensure that finally Arjun is able to take revenge for the death of his son Abhimanyu. There is so much to learn. Even in the current situation that we are going through in our own lives, we'll find funny twists and turns and how Dharma plays its part in ensuring that finally the right always wins over. And it also brings up the question of why did Yudhishthir have to stop Bhim from killing Jayadratha on that day? As Bhim said, had he killed him that day, maybe the war would have not happened the way it happened on the 13th and 14th day at all. Please take to the comment section. Share all your learning and views in terms of what you believe are the key points that you believe what you take away from this story. Dharma Tales, let's debate till we meet again. This is Prakash signing off.